Hi everyone, welcome back. This is our second keynote of the day. We're almost at the end, we're in the final stretches of the conference. I'm delighted to introduce Professor Michael Hopkins. Mike's going to take a slightly different perspective again by looking at the intersection between academia and industry, boundary spanning collaborations for drug discovery. Michael is a biologist by training with subsequent degrees in technology and innovation management and science and technology policy. He has more than 15 years experience researching the socio-technical challenges associated with medical innovation. In recent years, Michael has led a series of international research projects studying different aspects of the that support medical innovation. He has been supported by grants from the European Commission, NSF, and the UK's MRC, EPSRC, ESRC, Nesta, and the Wellcome Trust. Additionally, in recent years, Michael has consulted for the Human Genetics Commission, the Nuffield Council on Bioethics, the Strategic Advisory Board for Intellectual Property, HEFCI, and Cancer Research UK. And Michael has also provided training for staff in the biopharmaceutical sector on bioentrepreneurship. So welcome, Michael.
Thank you. Thanks very much. So I think unusually for the programme, and innovation, understand some patterns and draw some generalizations about how the biomedical ecosystem works and how it can be shaped and helped to improve. And I do that at the Science Policy Research Unit at Sussex with a team of colleagues who have worked with me, and I'm basing today's talk obviously on that collaborative work that we do. And the organisers invited me to talk about some recent work which I've been doing, and this wasn't sort of planned by design, but over recent years I've been approached by 3 different groups, people who are supporting links between academia and industry in 3 different settings. And so this is a nice opportunity for me to sort of try and draw those together and talk about these studies. But these are ongoing studies largely, so this is sort of a bit work in progress. But I've been working with Fabian Ibanez, who's a doctoral student, and he's been looking at GSK's site at Stevenage and the academic links that they have, the collaboration that they have, co-supervised by Malcolm Skingle. We've also been invited to look at the work of the translation team in the Crick Institute, looking at how they're supporting a large number of researchers in that centre to conduct translational research. And of course, also I've been really charting the development of UK spine and its growth over recent years. So I'm going to try and look now at some of the opportunities and the challenges, but also really importantly, the support that can be provided to encourage these collaborations between academics and industry. And I like to start often actually with this slide, which is it's an excerpt from a report from 2011. It's the strategy for the life sciences produced by BIS, as it was then. And I like this because there's continuity here. I mean, we had a life sciences vision document that was put out last year. So the government has been emphasising the importance of the life sciences for obviously improving health, but also for supporting the economy, for economic growth. And there's been this consistent theme of the UK aiming to be a hub internationally for the life sciences, to be an attractive environment. I think there's some success there. The measures from BIA, the Bioindustry Association, recently they've shown steady growth, quite strong growth in funding coming into the sector for the small firms in the sector. And also, just last week we heard Moderna is going to build a manufacturing site here, and there's opportunity for UK scientists to get access to that technology platform. So there are good signs there, but this has long been an area of emphasis. I guess that's the key point to make. And I also like this nice simple diagram in the report, which very succinctly captures the key role of academia working with industry and with the NHS, and more working around patients to support innovation in this sector. And funders have been trying to support this collaborative effort as well for many years. I present here a theory of change, rather complex process that the Medical Research Council have used to guide their thinking about the role of translational research and how we support it. And I think crucially here I want to emphasize, this central role that knowledge exchange plays in that. That we know, of course, that academics can produce publications, and those publications can influence clinical guidelines, and those could find their ways into helping to shape the care in the NHS, for example. But mostly we get progress from other routes which involve funding that goes into projects. The projects are delivered. Often these are collaborative projects. Increasingly, there are routes and opportunities to work with industry within those projects. And then it's that interaction that allows knowledge exchange, and it's that knowledge exchange that feeds forward into to supporting development of a wide range of products and services. So knowledge exchange is really important. That's being increasingly understood and supported by funders such as MRC and Research England, who put a lot of money into these sorts of areas. This might have run out of battery. Where am I? Oh, it's the slides, yeah. Oh, there we go. I think it's just aiming it under there. Okay, so they're trying to support these collaborations through funding, but what is happening in these collaborations, what they rely on is boundary spanning. So I wanted to just say a little bit, not hopefully too much on the conceptual side, but how in the management field we think about boundary spanning and what that is. Because what is happening here is that we're trying to exchange knowledge between individuals who are in different communities. And this is a quote from a seminal study by Tushman and Scanlon from the early 80s, and they explain how as problems become more complex, sorts of things that we're working on, sort of challenges that we're trying to address require more specialist knowledge. Of course, we develop these specialist communities, and that specialization is key to working efficiently in those groups, but specialization is a double-edged sword. So while it increases the efficiency of information processing in the unit, it also is creating obstacles to information processing between that unit and those outside, those in external areas. So these obstacles that are growing up are due to a divergence in language, so jargon. I was trying to be careful to not bring too much management jargon into this. I was talking to a colleague yesterday in one of the sessions who said, oh yes, social scientists, we just like to add jargon and make things sound more complicated to explain simple things. And so I'm going to try and not do that, but also, of course, scientists generate lots of jargon and special technical language to explain the things that they're working on. And so it's not only the language, but it's also the methods that we use. the values that we have, the norms, the rules that guide what we do. And all of these things, as they build up in specialist communities, create divides. So in order to exploit knowledge, to be able to transfer knowledge from one group to another, we need to be able to successfully transfer this knowledge and transmit the meaning as well. And that needs to go from individuals who are external. It needs to be transmitted to somebody in an organization that's trying to draw that in, and then transmitted on to others within the organization. And individuals that can perform that role of communicating with externals and communicating with internals are the boundary spanners. So you have to be expert at doing both those things, communicating internally and externally, and also preserving meaning. And to do that well requires understanding of the external and the internal audiences for that knowledge. Seem to be stuck again. Thanks. I'll carry on without the slides for a moment. We can understand that there are many challenges associated with this activity, and I've done some work with Fabian Ibanez and Malcolm Skingle to review some of the challenges in particular that are affecting the engagement with industry of physicians. And this is a community which is really important for translational research. And there are actually several literatures that we looked at to understand this, but there are a whole raft of things that come from that about the sorts of things that prevent clinicians from engaging in that sort of research. And I'll just talk very briefly about this because it was quite a long review, but essentially physicians, and this also goes for academics as well, have various different duties that they're responsible for. So clinical care, but also research, teaching, administrative duties. And to work with industry as well, there's often a feeling that you need to improve your research skills or maybe work in a different way. So there can be a gap over the confidence in understanding what is needed. There's also funding. Time is money. You need money to be able to work with. Thanks. Great. You need funding to provide the time for the interactions. Also, there can be cultural concerns over differences in culture and how we conduct our research. So with academics and physicians, there can be concerns working with industry that they may be worried that they may not be free to produce their work as quickly, to publish as quickly, or they may be concerned about how colleagues will see them, with credibility issues with people who work with industry more. Also, of course, there's a long shadow from prior unethical practices in some parts of the industry, and that can also influence people's willingness to engage with industry. Perhaps more commonly, though, there are very obvious issues, and I've heard this in one of the sessions earlier today, even around inter-organizational frictions. You get, for example, collaborations that involve intellectual property, and there can be concerns about that arise. And also, we have a much larger pool of individuals who could engage in these collaborations, but who don't. So there are issues around diversity and engaging wider of individuals in these collaborations. And then finally, what we found was also there is an evidence gap. We don't know what are the sorts of things that would work best to encourage more people to be involved in these collaborations. But nonetheless, we maintain that if we can increase familiarity, if we can more frequent interactions, then we get trust and understanding and more porosity, and also if we can adopt more shared standards, again, that's another thing that can help to encourage interactions and exchange, as well as increasing our awareness of funding opportunities. So these sorts of challenges are actually, they're quite numerous, but also they are well understood in other areas of science as well. And that there's a group of economic geographers in particular who have conceptualized the way in which individuals work and what can support individuals to work together to create knowledge and transfer that knowledge. And what they provide us with is an understanding that that it's easy to transfer knowledge when individuals are more proximate, close together, not just in distance, but in a range of different dimensions. And so these dimensions actually sort of underlie some of the challenges that we're identifying in that previous literature. So for example, they stress the importance of cognitive distance. So if you're from different disciplines and you share different languages, you use different methods, that is creating a cognitive distance between individuals. Likewise, if you have different roles in your respective organizations, in your respective employers, providing care, for example, versus teaching and conducting research, that creates an institutional distance between you. If you work in different organizations that have different priorities, or even within the same organization, working in different departments, there's an organizational distance that can produce barriers to working together as effectively. And then we also can have a social distance where we're not so familiar with individuals, where we don't have familiarity with them. And then finally, the last one, of course, geographic distance. And I know Zoom has done a lot to contribute to our collaborations distance over recent years, but there is more bandwidth in our interactions when we're co-located. So what we need then are ways of helping to bridge these distances. And what I've been looking at is with the CRIC and with colleagues in UK Spine is trying to understand how this knowledge exchange is being supported in these initiatives. And we can see that funders are putting money in to knowledge exchange professionals as a role to encourage the formation of a new group of specialists to help support these activities. And that's something which is, I think, still relatively unique about the CRIC and UK Spine, is that the emphasis that there is on these groups and the size of these groups. So what do knowledge exchange professionals do? Well, they can help to support boundary spanning by working with academics to write proposals, research proposals, but not just external research proposals going to external funders, but around internal pots of money that are focused on translational activities. They can also work to support links with internal individuals, so linking across the organization or across consortium, and also identifying individuals externally to help to build links with the outside. Also, they support projects, they work alongside the academics, not just to help administrate, but actually to guide and participate in the project. And of course, organizing events such as this, which is a really good way of creating new connections. And then lastly, knowledge exchange professionals can also engage at the strategic level in their organizations and in initiatives that they're involved in. So I think it's important to note that this goes way beyond traditional tech transfer roles. And of course, tech transfer was a function that universities and research institutes have had for many years now. But this is more involved, more closely connected to individual research projects, I would say. So one of the things I've been doing with my team is following UK spine and the growth of UK spine over its history. And we've been looking at how these boundary spanning links have been facilitated by knowledge exchange professionals. And what you can see here on the left is you can see this is what the network of UK spine looked like really at the outset. There's about sort of 60, 70 individuals who had connections there, and through the activities of the UK Spine, through the sub-projects that it's funded, we have these new working relationships which have developed. There's about sort of 300 individuals that are now connected into that network, and what that shows is that we've had that growth during the initiative, and we can go into another perspective. Remember, I was talking about those different dimensions that the geographers emphasized. This is another dimension that takes the same individuals and looks at connections between individuals who have different institutional roles. So we can look and see people who are working in industry, people who are working as university researchers, individuals who are involved in knowledge and technology transfer, individuals who have a research role, but they're mainly working in hospitals with the function of providing care, or sometimes individuals who are based in universities, but also have a hospital care role. And so what we can see is the connections between these individuals has been facilitated by this initiative, although notably when we break out these individuals by their role, we can see how difficult it's been to engage individuals from the NHS in particular. Of course, there was a pandemic going on during this period, but it also is a more general issue, engaging clinicians who are already quite stretched in the NHS, were already quite stretched before the pandemic. So these sort of maps help us to show knowledge exchange in action, to look at how initiatives can support boundary spanning and help us to measure that activity long before we would begin to see other more traditional measures from research like publications or licensing deals and so on. But I'm going to move now to look at work with GSK and look at how GSK provides a framework to support knowledge exchange. And what we see here is, at the company level, there is, of course, a research strategy, and these research collaborations are supporting that research strategy. And there is also a strong culture to encourage open innovation. I think this is an argument which has largely been won over recent decades. It's been very clear that even the largest firms need to collaborate quite intensively in the life sciences to get access to the knowledge that they need to innovate. And then there's also a collaboration framework to help guide individuals involved in these collaborations, which I'll come on to in a minute. But I want to emphasize that at the individual level, it's the individual industry researcher who, in pursuing their research, decides whether they need to go externally, and if they're going externally, whether they want to work with academics or whether they're seeking another industrial partner. And they're going to be responsible for setting up that collaboration and managing it. On the university side, on the academic side, you've got to have an academic who's interested in engaging and working with their partner, and they're managing that relationship for the university. But I haven't got the university on here, and there's a reason for that. This is an interaction between individuals, and on the industry side, there's a very clear framework to support these interactions. So there are standardized modes for collaboration, whether it's consultancy or a joint PhD project or a collaborative research project. There are formal processes to go through to ensure that the project that is going to be supported is tied to the research strategy of the organization, and there is a focused approach to intellectual property. We were talking before about how that can create frictions, but in the case of GSK, they try to minimize the IP that they're trying to draw up their agreement around. A lot of stuff will be peripheral, and that can be left, and then that reduces the scope for disagreement. And then also, crucially, using standard terms can be really important as well in that. Lambert agreements, for example, provide sort of common text. Then the support teams have to be in place to help staff to have the administrative support for that. The resources, of course, to pay for the collaborations, and training in soft skills to help individuals with networking and project management and so on. The partnering of these individuals is in the job description, and there has to be time in the workload to allow individuals to have those engagements. And of course, the targets and incentives that individuals are working to encourage them to not only pursue work internally, but also to go externally when needed. And as I said, this is all guided by the organizational strategy. On the university side, though, and I have to say, we haven't studied this in as much detail in this particular project, but we do know that these things are more variable on the university side. And the university has more limited influence on what the direction is of its researchers, and indeed less influence on whether or not they are going to engage with industry. But rather, the university, despite having its research strategy and its own collaborative frameworks, is relied more on by the university researchers as simply providing the administrative support, contract negotiation, administration of awards and so on. We can, of course, support these organizations in their collaborations by providing different types of funding. So in the UK, of course, we have the Research Excellence Framework, which rewards universities for successful knowledge exchange that leads to impact. And of course, now we also have the Knowledge Exchange Framework, which is also providing more funds to universities and measuring their activities here. But this really is sort of money going in at the university level, but there is this issue of how you incentivize academics and whether money that goes in here is trickling down and leading to behavioral change at this level. But of course, academics and industry scientists can both get access to project funding for collaborative projects. They can be supported in networking, and they can be supported with training. But I think there's still more to learn from how the industry researcher is empowered to be a boundary spanner. And if we look at the GSK scientists, again, what we see is it's up to them to decide when they're going to go out, when they're going to form these partnerships with academia. They can select the mode. They are representing their firm externally. They are the ambassador for their firm, but also internally, they represent that collaboration, and they are trying to communicate the learning from that to their wider audience. And what I think is of course, they have to have good project management skills and communication skills, soft skills. But I think what is often overlooked when people talk about the divide between industry and academia is actually a lot of these individuals are actually formerly academics. So of the ones that were interviewed in this study, about 60% had been in academic roles for an average of 7 years before they'd gone over into the industry side. And of course, that helps for them to have an understanding of both sides of the collaboration. So I'll just sort of finish up with some conclusions. First of all, it really is difficult to find partners and build collaborations. It takes a lot of time, And because it does take a lot of time, that is particularly problematic when you don't have that in your workload, or when resources are quite constrained, as we see in the health service, for example. So, boundary spanning is time consuming. We need to have the time. Familiarity and trust needs to be built up. Lots of events, frequent opportunities to cross paths is really important in that. On the scientist side, particularly in academia, I think there's still room for more incentives. We need incentives to encourage individuals to spend time on translational research. It's not necessarily very inviting from a career point of view, and it can be rewarding, but the more traditional reward mechanisms don't particularly incentivize translational research. And then, of course, the training and support needs to be there for individuals to do that. Knowledge exchange professionals are growing in number, and there is more funding support for knowledge exchange in universities. That can help, but also remember what I was saying earlier about when you create a new specialization, you also create boundaries. So that's something that also has to be considered. Where do we put the knowledge exchange professionals to reduce those boundaries? And there's more work that is needed. There's more experimentation, more policy experimentation that is needed to work out what really is going to get the most bang for our buck in terms of supporting knowledge exchange. And that involves, as I said, experimentation, but also evaluation of the results and learning from that. So I'll finish there, and also I'd like to acknowledge the support that we have in our studies from interviewees. It's been really great over the last couple of years, meeting people on Zoom, often talking about their research really over quite long periods of time. That's really, really valuable. And also thanks for the facilitation we've had from UK Spine and the CRIC translation team and GK's academic liaison office. So thank you. I'll stop there.
Thank you, Michael. That was some really interesting perspectives from the outside looking in, and I particularly like the maps, which basically say that the UK Spine has been great at doing knowledge exchange and all those amazingly dense networks. We've got a couple of minutes for questions. Yeah, Jennifer. Oh, sorry, there's a mic coming up with Harriet.
Thanks very much for that. It's really, really interesting talk, and it's great to see parallels with this work and the work ABPI has done recently on research collaborations, which I'm happy to discuss offline. My question is really, I think you've demonstrated that networks within kind of an area of interest like UK Spine in the ageing space is really helpful and generates those cross-rounds, how we connect those networks even within different areas. So aging and with cancer and with inflammatory diseases or something. Have you done any work on looking at different networks across different kind of buckets, so to speak, of specialism in the UK, and where we could potentially garner that cross-network collaboration? Wow. Well, I mean, in short, no. I mean, we have focused on specific projects and understanding those. I guess somewhere in the, you've seen the maps, but somewhere in the qualitative narrative that we capture alongside that, there may be mention of those beyond the immediate network, but our focus is really these working relationships which are formed within individual projects, and of course everything is connected more generally. That would be really complicated to map.
This question over here.
Thanks. Yeah. Can I make a comment on your previous question as well? So with the new UK Ageing Networks that are funded by UKRI, the aim is to actually bring everybody together. So there will be individual networks with individual focal points like cognitive frailty or muscle aging or whatever. And each network will have industrial partners, academic scientists, clinicians, social scientists, public involvement. So each of those networks together, and then we as well. So we've got funding only at the moment for 2 network of networks meetings, but that should actually happen within the next couple of years. So hopefully that is something positive. But something I wanted to ask on your conclusions, right? Scientists need incentives, and you mentioned sometimes working with industry has had a bit of a bad rep. And a lot of academic institutions still have a very fixed mindset that industry is going to the dark side. How do we overcome that particular mindset so that we can actually encourage academic industrial collaborations in a very positive way?
Well, I think, it starts with, meetings where you are able to bring people together, in different formats. But, I think you have to have repeated interactions to be able to build understanding and trust. So, it's about bringing individuals together, which you can't do quite so well on Zoom, right? But, events, as I said, like this, have a role to play in that. You need this sort of serendipitous space for interactions.
So I guess I've got a question that sort of partly follows on from that. You made a comment about senior leaders in industry. What about senior leaders in academia? I think in some ways this room here reflects a number of institutions, academic institutions, where there is clearly a drive from the very top to get involved in the kind of activities that naturally lead to interaction with industry, but that's a very small proportion of UK academia. So what does do you have any thoughts on, what VCs and heads of department and so on can do or should be doing to sort of encourage this behaviour?
One of the things obviously is to do that. And well, I mean, one very clear thing from the literature is also leading by example. So if a department has individuals who work with industry, then that's a very powerful influence on others who are working in that environment, working with them. And one of the things actually which also comes across from research, which is quite interesting, is when you have an individual who's working with industry, the postdocs that are working with them then have that's benefiting their network. They're seeing what's involved. They will be perhaps more likely not just to collaborate with industry, but also to cross over and to work in industry as well. And the more people are moving backwards and forwards, then the more porosity, to borrow a term Malcolm uses a lot, that you get. So I think this is something that we've seen probably certainly in the last decade. I was aware of this big move by universities set up academic drug discovery units. You had people leaving industry and going and working there. You'd heard a lot about people going and working in industry, not necessarily coming back, but then over this last decade, I've seen quite a lot of people, moving backwards and forwards, and of course that then supports provides more opportunities for people to interact and collaborate, because you've got more individuals in the system that understand both those communities.
Got 2 more quick questions, one from Chaz and then up to Paul.
Michael, in one of your earlier slides, you talked about outputs, outcome, and impact. And in that, you embraced knowledge exchange, and we're all comfortable with that. Do you think if we started to think about, I don't know, impact creating teams, it would not just span boundaries, it would break them down? And I'm just thinking of 2 recent examples in our own institution. With the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine, it has completely broken down the boundary between the university and AstraZeneca. There are so many things happening there. Likewise, the recovery trial, there's so many clinicians, academics working with so many hospitals across the NHS. So, I mean, I love the knowledge exchange narrative, but I'm just wondering whether the next step is actually impact creating teams, because of course, society, industry, government funders, they are looking to all of us to create impact.
Sure. I mean, the Research England definition of knowledge exchange implies, impact, but how do we do it you know, quickly, how do we do it efficiently, effectively? You know, the lessons from the pandemic, well, I mean, can we generalize from them? And there was such a unity and a push and an urgency. I heard one individual who was involved in medical research on the radio talking about how it was, you know, like driving through a city where somebody had put all of the traffic lights on green for you. But generally speaking, we're not in that situation. We're sort of in a kind of a gridlock often, where individuals are trying to do lots. They're expected to do lots of different things all at once. So that, you know, I think you need more resource. You need more bandwidth or flexibility often, you know. And one of the things that, in organizations that are trying to innovate, you need a bit of slack. You know, you need a bit of time where people can go and investigate some new possibilities, maybe make some new links or explore a new project. And when people are completely filled up in terms of their workload models and so on, then you may not necessarily have the flexibility. Mm-hmm. Sure. There was a very clear priority, and a lot of other things got parked. Yeah.
Really nice talk. Thanks, Michael. So you made the point of physical co-location being really, you know, important to well-run collaborations. Did you come across, or have you come across, what the significant barriers to that co-location might be, both from the industry side and the academic side, and how close are we to breaking down those barriers?
That's a really interesting question. I mean, one of the issues is obviously with co-location is having the space, being allowed to put people together, being allowed for health and safety reasons, have people in the offices. I mean, of course, you know, you can have virtual collaborations, but some things just work better and faster when individuals are in the same room, and there's more opportunity, obviously, you know, to learn from each other close at hand. I was one of the things that Fabian Ibanez studied at GSK was this initiative called the Immunology Network, and there GSK opened its labs to have academics actually come in and work with industry researchers, and you know, get access to all of the great facilities that they have at Stevenage. What we saw there was some really interesting things, like you can actually give people the opportunity to work together, but then they have to be really clear about kind of what the rules of engagement are. You know, can I talk to these people? What can I talk to these people about? Because, you know, they're from outside. So you need to provide the guidance so that people know how they can work together. Even if you put them together, they may still need training sessions. They need more background on what's going on the academic side. They need to be freed up and using the facility they've got permission to use. So that has to be an understanding, if they're going to be allowed in, that they have that time to really actually make the most of that opportunity. And it also has to be critical mass, because if you transplant people from industry into, well, actually this was the other way around, this is people from academia into an industry setting, you know, the postdocs can get a bit lost unless there's enough others around you know, who are going through the same experience and have you know, can share that with them. But, you know, those are things that have been learned from that experience. And I think, you know, the Immunology Network's been, you know, further funded, and another new round of people coming in. So I hope that sort of answers the question. And of course, the same can happen on the opposite side. You can have industry people working in academic labs, as you have at Crick. Yeah.
Great. That's all we've got time for. But I'm going to hand over to Graham and our great industry panel. But first, just want to say a massive thank you for coming all the way up from Brighton. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
You know,